We need, to receive true love from God to be able to love God truly. We need to see an example, of true love for God, and we need to get that love from, of course, from Father's example, from Father's life, which was lived not only for God, of course, but for us, wasn't it? When Father went through these things, we understand this was Father's love for God, but of course this was consequently Father's love for us. Because if you love parents, what must happen? If you love your parents, what comes out of loving your parents? You must love your brothers and sisters, mustn't you? You have to. Children's love leads to brothers and sisters' love. Do you understand? It is so. God planned it like that. That's what naturally happens. Because Jesus loved God, because Father loved God, Father did what he did not only to love God, but to love us. Isn't it? And Father was living, going through these things to pass that love of God to us. Anyhow, naturally, originally, true parents, Adam and Eve, passed God's love to their children receiving this true love of God, they truly love their parents, therefore they learn to truly love each other, based on, out of, as a result of, caused by their love for their parents. They learn to love brothers and sisters. Then out of learning to love as a daughter and as a sister, this is the foundation to learn to love as a wife, of course, isn't it? Out of loving as a daughter and loving as a sister actually comes up the desire to love as a wife, or be loved as a wife, to love and be loved as a wife. This desire is coming up out of this growth and development that comes from being a daughter and being a sister. Out of being a son and out of being a brother, your development occurring within yourself, artistic development, comes up when you want to love your wife. Out of son's love and brother's love comes husband's love, looking for your wife, looking for somebody to love as a husband. This love leads to this love, leads to this love, which of course in turn leads to parents' love, doesn't it? Love your wife, love your husband. Out of this love you have for each other, another yearning to love is coming. Another love that wants to be given and wants to have something to give it to. This love is coming up. This is parents' love, waiting and looking for children. So if each love is built upon the other love, then each love must be true, mustn't it? Do you know what I mean? There has to be true parents' love to be true children's love. There has to be true children's love to be true brothers and sisters' love. There has to be true parents' love, children's love, brothers and sisters' love to be true conjugal love. There has to be true children's love, brothers and sisters' love, conjugal love to be true parents' love. Do you know what I mean? It's the way that love is passed, isn't it? It's the way that love develops and grows. This is Heavenly Father's plan. But unfortunately, true love was not passed. Heavenly Father passed his true love to Adam and Eve, but they didn't know it. They didn't receive it. They didn't follow it. They didn't obey it. They didn't keep it. They didn't respond to it. They followed Satan's love instead. They passed Satan's love to each other, and then the place where they met in love, this was not where God met them. God could not be there. God was not part of it. It wasn't anything to do with God's plan. It wasn't God's idea. It was nothing to do with Heavenly Father's love. It was something else. And then this love passed to Cain and Abel. And then Cain and Abel didn't receive true love of God. They received something else. Then they responded to this something else they received. Obviously, how could they respond the right way? Very difficult to respond the right way when they received the wrong love, because they're object, isn't it? Object is influenced by subject. They can't love each other. And this went on down all of human history, with God trying in the history of restoration to put in his love, after the event, isn't it? So Satan's love has expanded and grown and developed, and then God tries to come in with his love, as best he can through the saints and the sages. Do you know what I mean? As best as he can through the good angels. God tries to put his love in instead of this rotten love. Tries to put something in to make parents better parents, to make children better children, to make brothers better brothers, to make husbands and wives better husbands and wives, to make parents better parents. But it's not enough, because what do we need to bring down the true love of God? What do we need? We need true parents. No true parents, no passing the love of God properly. That's why true parents must make true parents. Do you understand? Otherwise, the love of God will never come into God's world. Have to make true parents. Anyhow, this is how love is growing. Each love is built upon the other love. Also, the greater love, this love is broader, wider than this love, which is wider than this love, which is wider than this love. And the greater love includes the smaller love. So each love builds to the next love. And of course, when each next love comes, it doesn't mean this love is discarded or this love ceases to be. So all these loves are staying, building and making some incredible love, incredible love, which is Heavenly Father's plan made substantial. This love, you can just love daddy and mummy. This love, you can love wider than daddy and mummy. You can love your brothers and sisters. And from loving your brothers and sisters, you can love outside of your family. This love is wider again. How can we say this is wider again? Because this love is just between two people. It's because you can love your husband as your father, as your son, as your brother, and as your husband. You can love your wife as your mother, as your daughter, as your sister, and as your wife. So there's a lot of different loves, coming together in this love. And then, of course, parents' love is wider still. Parents' love can love all the different children, the young ones, the old ones, the brothers, the sisters, the young brothers, the older sons, the younger daughters, older daughters, all this sorts of love. And again, spread out beyond your family towards all people as your children or whatever. And of these loves, the most crucial love, the most important love in a sense, the key love, which will decide whether this process of passing of love will happen or not, that's this one, isn't it? Because this is deciding whether love is passed or not, isn't it? Isn't it? Because this is give and take between man and woman. No give and take between man and woman, no passing of love, isn't it? Can't pass. No next generation. No increase of love. So conjugal love is the result of children's love and brothers and sisters' love, but without conjugal love, no parents' love. Conjugal love is the representative love. It is the center of the cosmos. It is where feminine and masculine come together, where sung-sang and hyung-sang come together, positive and negative come together, where the two sides of God come together, where the true man and the true woman come together, where the true father and the true mother become the true parents. This makes the position of the second created. This is the place in which other human beings are born. Out of this love, other human beings should be born. And this love of husband and wife, which becomes parents' love, which is past the children, this is the origin of love beyond the family. Because it's in the family that love is learned, and that through this learning of love, we learn to love outside of our family. The society is just a development of the family, an extension of the family. From family comes society, comes nation, comes world, comes all humanity. All this expansion, the expansion of humanity, this should have happened centered in Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve, as the children of God, will become the parents of their children, and the grandparents of their children's children, and the great-grandparents of their children's children's children, and so on and so on and so on. All down human history should have been like that. For 10,000 generations, forever, the love of God would have passed. In this sense, the individual family is a miniature of all human society. It's the basis and the miniature for all human society. Society is just an extension of the family. In this society, which is an extension of the family, basically, all subjects, all people with responsibility, all people in the subjective position to guide, to dominate, to direct others, they should all have parental heart. Of course, parents should have parental heart. Teachers should have parental heart. All managers, all bosses, all people in charge of everything in society, all the chiefs, they should also have parental heart. They should also be passing the true love of God towards their family, their children. The center of the family is his parents. They must pass the love of God to the children. If they cannot do it, the love of God will not come to the children. Teachers, they must bring the love of God into the school, into the college, into the place of instruction. All the managers, all the bosses, they must bring the love of God into the hospital, into the university, into the local government, into the community, into the nation through central government. Or they must pass, and do what they do because they love God, because they love the people, fundamentally, as their children. Then if this was like that, this becomes kingdom of heaven on earth, where all the places where love is getting passed, these are all faithfully passing the love of God. Fundamentally based on parents' love. And then, of course, within the family, how do we think of each other within the family? When Dr. Lee was explaining this content about the three great kingships, he explained Father wants to change our concept about who we are. Because our concept about who we are is so low, is so small, is so miserable compared with God's concept of who we are. So that's why Father must use some sort of terminology that takes us up out of our secular, miserable concept to something much more beautiful, to something like what God really thinks about us and about each other. So that's why we have to understand who are grandparents. Who are our grandparents? Grandparents are the kings and the queens. They're not just, Granddad Fred and Grandma, Doris or whatever it is. They are the kings and queens. They are the kings and queens of the past, representing all the spiritual world, all the ancestors, all the people there in the spiritual world, represented by them. Connecting to all the spiritual world. I go and visit my mum along the corridor, and there she has a picture of her grandma, her grandma. And of course, she loves her grandma. There's my mum getting on for 80. She loves her granny. Do you understand? She loves her granny because she remembers how her granny taught her to knit. You go and ask her, she'll tell you the story. I know she will. So she loves the people in the spiritual world. She loves them. She remembers them. She loves them. This love should have connected right through to Adam and Eve. You see what I mean? This bond of love, through whom love originally passed to us. There are the grandparents of grandparents, behind whom is the grandparent of grandparents of grandparents. This is God. This is God. So grandparents, they're the kings and queens of the past, representing the spiritual world and representing God. This is who grandparents should be. This is how we should think about grandparents. It's not so easy to do. Father's often telling us off, in the Western world because we don't love our elderly people, because we don't love our grandparents. Then parents, what about parents? Parents, they're the kings and queens of the present. They're responsible for the present, representing this time in life or the physical world. So of course, grandparents support parents to be kings and queens of the present, because they're responsible for the present, what's going on now in that sense. And children, who are children? Our children are future kings and queens. They are the princes and the princesses. They are the kings and queens of the future. So, wife is your queen, husband is the king. Grandparents, they're the past king and queen. Children, my sons are princes. My daughters are princesses. Princes and princesses of what? Princes and princesses of the royal family. The royal family. What is this? The family of true parents Adam and Eve, or the family of true parents God. God's family. This is God's family. In this family, there's a tradition of love, a tradition born of love. There's laws and regulations and rules. What are these laws and regulations and rules for? What are they for? Why do we need them? What are they kept for? Why should they be kept? What's the purpose of them? Why should we keep laws and regulations? What's the purpose? To make love, isn't it? To make love possible. By keeping these rules and regulations, love will happen. So, God keeps rules. Why does God keep rules? Why does God need to keep rules, for goodness sake? Can't God break a few rules? Can't God make them and break them? God is God after all. Can't he decide whether it's a rule today and not a rule tomorrow? Can't he change his mind? Goodness me, surely God can change his mind. Surely God can break the laws. Surely God can ignore the rules. What are the laws to God after all? God is God, But what are the laws to God? The laws are the way that love requires God to behave. Do you know what I mean? Love requires God to keep his own laws, doesn't it? So in the family, in the royal family, we keep a certain tradition. This is the tradition that love requires. Through the practice of this tradition, love is practiced, love is expressed. So Father talks about this time, as many times in Korea, he talks about palace law, or family law. Should be kept in the royal family. So Father, using all this big terminology in a sense to lift up our minds as to who we are, because we don't understand who we are. We don't understand who parents should be, our grandparents should be. We don't understand who our children are. We look at each other as just, that's my wife, that's my husband, that's my children, that's my parents. Which is nothing like how God is looking at us. But we don't understand who we are. We don't understand who other people are. Why don't we understand? Because we don't understand who God thinks we are. We don't understand who God made us to be. So we're not it. We don't make it. We're not it. We don't realize the plan of Heavenly Father. We don't make it reality because we don't know what it is. So Father, for the first time, is explaining what it is as never before. So how are we going to get to the ideal world if we don't know it is? How are you going to get to the place of happiness if we don't know where it is? Can't get there. If we don't connect this fundamental content to every attempt to reach greater happiness, do you think it'll get there? It won't. People can try and get happier by medicine, by science, by technology, by art, by you name it, whatever they like. But they will not get there without connecting it to this. Do you understand? There's no way. It cannot be.